right. I just looked at, you're right. I just looked at your LinkedIn profile, and it's it's filled with a very fascinating business experience. And then you just jump into academia now. This is rare. So
Yep.
please tell me about your background. How did this happen?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see I had a 30 plus year career in consulting. I spent a lot of time internationally. In fact, I graduated my undergraduate degree from University of Manitoba, which is kind of where I grew up. Where all of my family has their first degree from University of Manitoba. And quickly after graduating, moved to the U.S. My base for my career was in the U.S., but I spent so I went into consulting. I'll tell you a little story. I went into consulting because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I thought this is going to give me the ability to see cross industries, cross different functional areas. What is it that's going to inspire me? And I think every 2 years I'd say, I'm only going to stay in consulting for 2 more years. And I ended up making a career of 30 years out of it. It was because I got some amazing projects. I was not one of those people who popped from project to project every 3 months. My projects were typically 3 to 4 years. And I was usually involved from the very beginning, the strategy behind the project, what the organization wanted to do, all the way through design, usually major business process changes, and then implementation and actually starting to reap the rewards of the implementation. So, I got very close to all the companies that I was working with. I did that in North America, mostly the US. Then I was in Switzerland for 5 years. A lot of people know about the Nestle Globe project, one of the largest transformations in the world. I led that. And then I was in Shanghai for a number of years. And later in my career, I was asked to lead the Canadian business, which had been a bit of my dream because I'd never worked back in Canada since I started. And it was nice to be back in Canada. And I made a lot of interesting business connections while I was running the IBM consulting business. Went on back to New York and ran artificial intelligence and advanced analytics for IBM globally. And decided at about 30 years I needed a break. I retired and took a year off just to sort of figure out what I wanted to do next. And academia was not on my radar. I was approached by one of the people who I had made a connection with when I was running the Canadian business, who said, if you're going to start a new career, what would it be? And I sort of had my tick list of 5 or 6 things that were absolutely critical. One of them had to be that it was a social good. So what are we trying to do to fix things that in service of? I had another one was I needed to have a lot of control. That's probably a strong word, but I wanted to have the ability to be able to control the switches that needed to be flipped to make change. And it needed to be a big change project. Also, it needed, ideally to have some sort of technology component to it, since that's sort of my roots. And I wanted to do something, but as I mentioned, in service. And so she basically said, this clicks all the boxes. And I said, yeah, no, it doesn't, because academia moves way too slow.
Yeah.
And anyways, I went through the whole interview process, spent time with the advisory board, spent time with our actual board, because we do have some private businesses that are part of the school. And it turned out to be absolutely true. It's an amazing and very unique situation here that any dean would be very proud to be part of.
And so, while I'm speaking to deans across the world, I see a very clear challenge that, currently post-COVID, all of them are figuring out, how to launch courses online. I know COVID forced a lot of them to go online, and I think then there has been a pullback, but they've decided that, I don't think they've been able to deliver, the quality that they've sort of been known for. And now I think they're at a place where everybody's trying to figure out how to scale again. And we're sort of seeing, at least in the US, you're seeing the whole MS MBA take off. Now, how are you seeing the evolution of the space? Where do you expect the next growth to come for your school?
So let me rewind a bit, because pre-COVID, we had already made a decision to launch a partly online program. Our accelerated MBA is 40% asynchronous and 60% in person. And, sort of thank God, the gods were on our side on this one, because happily we had launched it in November before the March impact of COVID. And so our faculty already had some experience with asynchronous learning and digital learning assets, even before COVID hit. Kind of pivoting to when COVID happened, we did go online like everybody else. I'll just say that one of the things that was really important, I mean, I called the faculty superheroes in the way that they delivered. Even when we were online, we were very careful about the use of digital learning assets. So we knew it was a lot to be sitting face to face on these screens every single day. But we didn't overuse the learning assets. We didn't ever do lectures where you were just sitting watching video all the time. There's some data that we have that shows that that was a really smart thing to do. So when we look at the learning experiences and the learning outcomes of our students from the time that we were online, the learning outcomes are about the same. The student experience is down anywhere from 5 to 30%, depending on program, because different programs, we kept some in person, like our EMBA, we rented ballrooms in downtown Toronto and we kept everybody 6 feet apart, and we continued to deliver in person. But I say all that because we learned a lot about the student experience and the importance of the hallway conversations, the connections, etc. And that's what the difference was in that 5% down to 30% down on student experience. So learning, we can do it online, but student experience is different. So fast forward to now, as we think about our strategy and what we're doing, we are online versus in person. We have decided we will not offer, at least for the foreseeable future, a fully online experience. We believe part of our the importance of our program is to have an in-person experience. These are for degree programs and GDIPs and things like that. So the maximum we'll ever do is up to 40% online. So that answers sort of question number one. And sorry for the long-winded answer to get there, but I think it's important you understand the data that drove us to it. With respect to MSc programs, we are thinking about MSCs in some specialized areas. We've launched recently, we've had for a long time the MSc in International Business. We have an MSc right now in digital management. We have another one in business analytics. There might be a couple other specialized ones, but I don't want to chase fads, because you find that MSCs turn up and down. And we watch some of our competitors in Canada who've been really aggressive about launching MSCs. And they go spike and then they crash and spike and crash. And academia, it's really hard to stop things. It's easy. It's not easy to start anything, but it's easier to start things. It's almost impossible to stop. So we are being very maniacal about what we focus on. We are a general management and leadership school, and our focus will continue to be general management and leadership. If we offer specialization, it will be built into the core curriculum of our programs through the way that we deliver cases and bring cases in, and I'll speak a bit to that in a minute. And we will also offer GDIPs or extra learning opportunities that allow students to get, like if they want a GDIP in sustainability now, we offer that as something that you can do after the fact. So those are the ways that we're sort of responding. There's a few MSc programs, but I don't see that proliferating.
Okay. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that you started going online before COVID. And I've always heard that the biggest challenge is to get the faculty to move, to transition, to transform. And I'm assuming it's a bigger challenge because if you're not a faculty, I'm assuming you are looked upon as a business person who has been given this charge of leading this institution. So I'm extremely curious as to how did you manage this transition? If anything, this sounds 10x tougher than what any other person would have had it.
Well, one, we have a great team. So the decisions that are made in the dean's office are not exclusively my decisions. I work with my associate deans and my senior staff to sort of think through these things. But I will say that we already had the experience of the accelerated MBA. Mm-hmm. Now, when we launched the accelerated MBA, there were some cash incentives for faculty to participate in developing what we're calling these digital learning assets. And so, and we have some faculty who are really leading edge in terms of the way they think about teaching. Mm-hmm. So we encourage them to develop these courses. They already then were very comfortable with the concept of being online and managing in teaching suites and things like that. And those were the people that led the faculty through the transition. So it wasn't me doing it. It wasn't the dean's office. Everybody knew we had to do something. And so they basically, ran a bunch of faculty forums to say, this is how best practice gets delivered online. And, every student needs to have their camera on. We're not turning the camera off. We're running I think, we're all case-based here at Ivey, right. Where we will drive participation. We want to make sure that we hear from everybody. We want to know that our students are safe and well, even when they're online. And they sort of walk through, these are the things you need to do. So it was actually, driven a lot by our faculty team, not by me, not by the dean's office. We told them we had to do it, but then they came up with the approach for how to do it.
Okay. So, mostly the best business schools in the world, they have a very interesting challenge, while they're continuously doing cutting edge research, you're also evolving your view of the relevance of the MBA degree. So while you're at this top, how do you see the evolution and the relevance of an MBA degree right now?
So, we watch the market, obviously, and see, the leading indicator for us is how many people are writing GMATs. And we also watch the economy because it's countercyclical to what's happening in the economy in terms of demand for the MBA. But I think there's so many choices now for learners. And, so MBA, if we're talking the traditional MBA, it targets somewhere from 7 to 15 years of experience. When you're in that stage of your career, the lifelong learning options could be GDIPs, they could be certificates, they could even be non-certificate executive education courses, or it could be an MBA. I think individuals really need to be thoughtful and do their research on what they want to do and how an MBA might or might not help them. For me, one of the biggest things is you're thinking about career change or significant career acceleration. I would say almost all of our MBAs are looking at some sort of career change. If you think about what the MBA offers, it's got some really unique things. In ours, we focus on general management and leadership. And so we're often, you've got a lot of engineers who are pivoting over to a business degree. They've moved into a company and they see, if I want to actually accelerate in this company, I need to understand more. I need to have more breadth around all the general management and business concepts. There's also the importance of the technical skills that you get. In ours, and I'll speak a little bit more about our mission and strategy because I think that will help with some of the other questions. We do implement some of those technical related skills. But for us, a big part of our program is soft skills. We talk a lot about leadership and leader character. We think about your emotional intelligence and how to develop your emotional intelligence, your communication skills, your persuasion skills, and actually your ability to be persuaded. Like, you have to be open-minded and flexible. So we spend a lot of time on that. And then I think we also help them to build their network, not just in the class they have, but connections with alumni. And I think those are all, if those are what you're looking for at that stage of your career, we have the ability to provide that. But that's not the only option, right? So I don't think the MBA is for everybody. I think the MBA is for people who are very focused on developing those types of capabilities.
So while there is this extremely strong delivering of your general MBA skills, is there a significant pushback or demand from the industry asking for specialized skills within maybe AI, analytics, or anything else that you feel that the industry is asking you to evolve into?
Absolutely. And so, and I don't know how much you've looked at our material and our new Ivey Next strategy, but it's worth kind of covering that so that you can get an appreciation for how we're baking this in. So we actually made a really important change in our mission statement. So our mission statement was think globally, act strategically, and contribute to the societies in which we operate. We actually changed that last piece, think globally, act strategically, and address the issues facing business and society. And so, brilliant words, what the heck does it mean? So the critical issues that we worked on and we've decided to focus on in terms of changing the content in our general management programs are based on a lot of work that we did to understand what's happening in business right now. So what are boards and CEOs worried about? What are societal issues that we're worried about? And where is there a place where a business school, and in particular Ivey, have the ability to be able to speak in from our research and our teaching to be able to influence the outcomes of those issues? And we know those will evolve over time, and we have a team that sort of always watches those. We picked 3 areas. One is sustainability. We're ranked 3rd in the world in terms of our research on sustainability, but it's really focused on the strategies to get to net zero. The second is around the evolution of work. And the evolution of work is how work is changing because of technology, AI, analytics, all the digital transformation, how work is changing because of equity related issues, and how work is changing because of, I'm going to call it COVID, but environmental issues. So this pivot from in-person to online, work from home more, how do you build culture in those type of environments? And then the third critical issue that we have elaborated on is Canada's place in the world. So how do you build great entrepreneurial companies in Canada that can ultimately compete internationally? And that we don't lose, I don't know how much you're familiar with the Canadian landscape, but we, a lot of times companies grow to a certain size and then they sell to the United States. And that's not necessarily bad, but we really want great Canadian companies that operate internationally. And so we want to make sure we have the right policies, have the right skills to be able to build these companies, be innovative, and then grow beyond. So those 3 issues are now being embedded in all of our general management programs. So all of our MBA, our HBA, our MSc, every program we have, those topics are brought in through cases. We've tagged all of our cases around these issues so that we can see, is the curriculum evolving to address these issues? It's super interesting. I'm judging an MBA case competition today that's on the topic of, I got to look it up. It's like I didn't even know what this was before. Agrovoltaics. I don't know if you've seen this. So
Okay.
which is basically solar paneling
Solar panels.
over top of farmland,
Okay.
and they co-produce. So you're farming and solaring,
Okay.
in the same spot. But anyways, but this is how things are changing. So our case competitions pivot. The cases that we bring in, there's still big decisions that have to be made. You still have to think about all the general management issues, but you're starting to see the issues that are being solved in the cases to having much more of a flavor of, how do I compete internationally? What do I need to do in my entrepreneurial environment to be able to be successful launching a new product? What do I need to think about from a net zero perspective? So that's how we're bringing those specialized skills into our traditional programs. There's also a number of ways that we do it through electives that you can take. And as I mentioned, after you're done your main degree, you can do a GDIP or you can get a certificate in some of these topics. And you'll see these topics in all of our executive education programs as well.
So I think that's an extremely wonderful articulation. It's one of the best I've heard, because you've sort of put in a beautiful framework for the evolution of the institution. And it's amazing how we're able to sort of tag it and sort of make that a reality, in a step-by-step basis. That's really amazing. It's really good to see such phenomenal clarity and thought with them. I don't think we expect any less. So that's amazing. So when you're taking a shot at these fundamental visioneering changes that need to be made, how are you able to pull that off within an institution which has been around for so long? What makes you want to start these changes and implement them? Because these are the toughest ones, and people tend to forget about these over a period of time, because they've become so much a part of the system that I'm sure they will not remember this.
So, I mean, and I just want to make sure I understand your question. You mean the curriculum changes that we're trying to drive?
But the vision changes, like your ability to align with the what's important for Canada, the fact that you're aligning with the good that you want to do. And these are fundamental changes that you're sort of envisioning for the institution. And so what brings about these changes at the board level? Yeah.
So it's interesting. So first, if you just take those three critical issue areas, we've established a steering committee that includes faculty, staff, and our outside advisors, so alumni essentially, that regularly look at these topics to say, how are these evolving, and how are companies thinking about them differently, and how does the research need to pivot to be able to address these issues? And they talk, right? Like, so the committee meets about every 6 months. Now we've just started this, but the committee meets every 6 months to say, is this topic changing? Do we need to evolve it? Do we need to move it? So that's kind of part one, so that we stay relevant and current, and the curriculum will evolve over time, which isn't always easy in an academic institution. The second thing we do is we source funding to faculty on these areas. So we've defined critical issue topics, and we make investments for individuals who want to research in these areas. Now, one of the things I think is really important is that these topics have relevance to almost every sub-discipline in business. So you can talk about sustainability and be an operations faculty, an accounting faculty, a finance faculty, a marketing faculty. And so we're not favoring a discipline per se in this. They're topics that need multidisciplinary focus. So the beauty of that is you don't get into, you prioritize this over that. And like I said, we sponsor research events where faculty want to do publications on those topics. But then once they've published, we also build out ways for them to be able to share their great work into practice. And they built it into practice through cases, and they build it into practice through meeting with alumni networks, conference boards, things like that on their topics to bring it to practitioners. And then the third thing we do is as I mentioned, we tag our cases. So as cases get developed, we encourage case development in these areas. And as cases get tagged with these topics, we start to watch how they're pulling these cases into the curriculum. And we encourage them to pull them in. We give them metrics to say, hey, last year, 20% of your cases had a female case protagonist. You know, it'd be great. We're targeting to get everybody to 25%. Can you think the next time you pick a case, can you have a look at this? But they didn't have the ability to be able to do that before because they didn't have the case library information the way we did. Or if we want to bring in more on sustainability, 40% of your cases had concepts of sustainability, and it'd be great to get it to 50%. So those are how we're doing it to incent faculty, but also encourage faculty to bring these into the curriculum. And they are part of the decision-making on what are the critical issues. So, you know, I think it's about transparency and governance and giving them a voice.
And so, you know, recently, I think Tesla and Microsoft both were a little not terribly enthusiastic about hiring MBAs from a lot of schools. And I've noticed that every time the economy does a little bit of a turn, I think all large companies hold off on the MBAs. But this time, I think they've been a little bit more vocal, and they're saying that, hey, listen, we don't want guys to just come and manage people. We want them to be productive, immediately. So how do you sort of see that? And do you feel like, is there something that, you know, as an institution you need to do to produce graduates who are sort of hit the job floor running, if you will?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd say we haven't seen a drop in our ability to be able to place our MBAs. We always place in the high 90s percentile in terms of within, you know, all the metrics that are measured by all the companies or all the rankings. And I think the reason why is because our students graduate with a point of view on critical issues, and those are what companies are dealing with. So, and they also have very well-rounded leadership skills. We spend a lot of time talking, having them think about what makes a great leader. It's their competency, their commitment, and their character, and making sure that they develop all three elements of their capabilities, so they're able to hit the ground running. So they understand the critical issues, they hit the ground running, and they've got the relevant technical skills for the moment. But the reality is you can't get too myopically focused on those technical skills, and you keep referring to the technical skills. They're changing so fast. So 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we may not have graduated students who have a clue about ChatGPT.
Right.
We have to make sure that it gets into the program when it's relevant. That's how we do it. We do it through cases. And, but I don't want to get super myopically focused on they're not the skills that are going to carry you for the next 20 years. It's your leadership skills. It's your ability to be able to assess a problem and come up with a decision in an uncertain environment where you don't have all the information to do so. And be confident, but also be open-minded that you might not be right. And you need to be able to watch how things evolve and make those changes. Those are the things that actually make you relevant over the long haul.
I think that's, well said. I mean, what I've always suspected industries, I think is a lagging indicator. I think when things are not going well and they don't have they're not sort of ready to hire as much. I think they send some complaints to business schools saying, hey, listen, I think your graduates could be better. But I'm absolutely sure that the top institutions do not face this, the top 3 or the top 5. But interestingly, in India, we're noticing that once you sort of go after the top 10, I think recruiters are sort of trying to figure out if there are alternative mechanisms for them to hire and train people. So maybe while on one hand, and this is a very unique to India thing, we've sort of seen that in India, the fees for the MBA has gone up, I think 10 times over the last 2 decades. And salaries are not gone up 10x. And so it's very interesting that I think return on investment on an Indian MBA post the top 10 is becoming very suspect. So I suspect that the most of the top 5 or the top 10 globally, extremely good value for money in terms of what a student takes in.
Well, just a comment about that one of the big shifts that we did to have better value for money is to shift to a 1-year MBA, which I think really makes for a compelling, there's some interesting ways to think about this, because we are a residential, at least our traditional MBA program is a residential program. We're in London, Ontario. It's 2.5 hours away from Toronto. It's hard for somebody, early, 7 to 15 years into your career, to leave your family, to leave your friends, to leave your career and come to a new place. Right. So it's easier to do that if it's only for a year versus 2 years. Also, the cost is a lot more, we're not charging $80,000 a year. We're charging $80,000 for the entire MBA. And that, I think, makes it a little bit more easy to stomach. It's still a lot of money. I'm not trying to suggest that it's not a lot of money, but value for money in terms of return, you're not 2 years out of the market, you're 1 year out of the market, and then you're placed well after you graduate.
So with respect to the 1-year MBA programs, how do you see yourself? How do you separate yourself from the rest of your competitors as such? And I'm talking about the global ones. I'm talking about the INSEADs. How do you sort of see yourself fit into that 1-year space?
Yeah. So for us, first and foremost, we define our market as real world leadership. So I think when you make a decision about which MBA you're going to choose, one of the ways you should be deciding is on how you learn best. And some schools do more of a lecture style. Some schools do more of a case-based style. We are 100% focused on the case-based style of learning. And that is quite unique to us and maybe 4 or 5 other schools around the world. So you've got Harvard, Darden, us. I'm missing one other, which I can't believe I'm forgetting right now. And so that's something that's quite unique in ours. The second is our focus. We call it real world leadership. We focus on the leadership and general management principles. So it's that combination of case-based, real-world leadership skills that we're developing, and then making sure that every student who graduates has a point of view around these critical issues facing business and society. And that's our promise for our students. And is it 100% differentiated? Probably not, but I know in Canada, there's no one else doing it. And I know internationally, there's probably a handful that are doing it.
So since you're so clear, you have such clear opinions on how your school is run, while you are getting in these high quality candidates, what are the kind of personality traits you're really looking for when you're admitting them to your school?
Curiosity. Well, actually, I'll back up a little bit, because another piece of our strategy has to do with our values. And I'll just speak to each of our 4 values that we, again, as a community defined. This was a very collaborative process to put together the strategy. And it sort of speaks to sort of the candidates that we want. So one is inclusivity. We really value people who are sort of world thinkers. They're beyond, they've got more of a global perspective. They value and they have the ability, and they've demonstrated in the past their ability to bring more voices into conversations than less. The second is integrity. So we're always looking, I think probably everybody would say the same thing. We want students who have historically demonstrated honesty, but also approachability. They care about community, which is our third one. And the last is courage. They've got ambition to do something big. They want to, they're not looking to be a middle manager in an organization. They want to actually run things in some time in their life. They want to make a big contribution. It doesn't have to be corporate. It could be in a societal way, but we're looking for students who have big ambitions.
So while there are quite a few Indian students who are applying to the school, is there a specific set that you would like to reach out to and say, what you would want more Indian students of a certain type that would sort of fit in with the needs of the school? Is that something you would be able to articulate and say, we would prefer to see more?
It's the same as what I've just said. If these values need to resonate with you, and you need to, as you think about who you are, these values have to resonate with you. We don't want people in the community who don't live to those values. It's really important. We are making big shifts in terms of how our faculty show up and live these values, and we expect our whole community to show up and live these values. So to me, that would be a very important aspect of anyone who's looking at our programs. I would also say those that learn best through case-based method. Not everybody loves that. You've got to be comfortable speaking into a conversation. You've got to be comfortable with being very participative and engaged in your class. If you're a book reader and you've traditionally, sat in lecture halls and just took notes and then wrote the exams, this place isn't going to do well for you.
Okay.
Unless you want to change. But I mean, you've got to put yourself out there then.
So, 2019, you start as the dean, and I think your term is set as of now until next year. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you're extremely proud of having achieved in this last couple of years?
So one would be getting this new strategy launched, and the real shift to become more agile in terms of our curriculum. The other that we haven't really talked about, and it fits across all of our programs, is just thinking about how we leverage technology to deliver our programs. And so, and I referred to it a little bit around digital learning assets, but how we're pivoting our organization to take advantage of technology in a better way and operate our classrooms better and provide more immersive experiences is another big shift that we've made. And then I think the third is more around how we're evolving our post-graduation engagement with our alumni into lifelong learning. So, we have pivoted our executive education programming to be very centered around these critical issues. And again, they'll evolve over time, but it's really trying to get all of the pieces of our organization aligned. So we've got Ivey Publishing aligned to developing more in the space. We've got our executive education aligned to the space, and we're innovating in the way that we deliver.
So, seeing that you're a woman of action, I'm sure you've also planned for the next few years. In terms of directionally, how you sort of, leaving the guardrails so that, the next set of initiatives happen. What are some of those things that you feel, that are going to flower in the next few years, if you will?
I think, we're already seeing a bump in our research productivity from the changes that we've made. And I believe that we've got a great trajectory. If you sort of look at the faculty work that's being developed today that, will be published in the next 2-3 years, I think you're going to see some phenomenal work come out of our institution and some phenomenal thought leadership. We've also created the forums with our expansion of our campus in Toronto to bring the thought leadership to practitioners. And so I believe you're going to see a lot more about Ivey in the context of practitioner-oriented engagement, which what I mean is when people talk about, I want to change, do something with net zero, that they're going to be referring to Ivey research in that. So we're going to see our impact felt by practitioners in the market. And then I think the third is where you're going to see our graduates go, which they'll be leading. They continue to lead Canadian companies and many global companies. So.
Okay, Sharon, we're sort of close to wrapping up. So I have a question for you. Is there anything you wish I would have asked you, and then I will give you the chance to answer that?
Yeah, culture.
Yes.
So we did chat about it a little bit, but the culture of academic institutions is very interesting. And we've been on a little bit of a journey here over the last few years around culture. And a lot of, when you think about how academics are traditionally trained, it's very about individual and self, not about working in community and working in the best interest of the community. And that's how you're trained, right? And as you go through your PhD, you get more narrow and narrowly focused on solving this very small problem, important problem, and deep, but not breadth. And trying to develop the idea of community and values that impact the community in an academic institution is extremely hard, but it's actually critical for what I think is going to be important in the next several years in terms of, which institutions thrive, not just survive, but thrive, and which ones fall by the wayside. We need more focus on the success of the whole, not just on we have to celebrate success of individuals, but we should celebrate the fact that a success of an individual is made from many people in the organization helping them. And I don't want to underestimate the importance of shifts in culture that are needed to make academic institutions successful in the future. And I think we're on that journey. I think our journey the culture is still very fragile here, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And it's kind of back to those values I articulated, and why when we think about the students we want to bring in, they need to emulate those values as well.
Makes a lot of sense. And so with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so very much, Sharon. I think I thoroughly enjoyed asking these questions. Sorry about the minor hiccups.
No worries.
But it was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll sort of get back to you within a couple of days with the transcripts, and look forward to your next amazing journey. I mean, it's so good to sort of speak to you.